In recent court documents, disgraced pastor Robert Morris said he told all the elders at Gateway Church 3 times that he had molested a child in 2005, 2007, and 2011. Morris claims he told the elders all the details, that his victim, Cindy Clemishire, was only 12 when the abuse started and 17 when it stopped. But 2 of the most prominent elders from that time say they had no idea.
I was on my couch, the phone rang, Pam was sitting there, and I put it on speakerphone because it was a longtime friend of mine, and Pam listened to the phone call, and we went, what? I mean, you can't imagine.
Pastor Brady Boyd is now the senior pastor of New Life Church in Colorado Springs, Colorado. But from 2001 to 2007, he served as both an elder and an associate senior pastor at Gateway Church under Robert Morris. Similarly, well-known Bible teacher Jimmy Evans served as either a Gateway elder or apostolic elder during all the years Morris says he disclosed his abuse to Gateway's board. Evans also frequently filled in for Morris on weekends. But in a letter to supporters last week, Evans claimed Morris deceived him, first saying he had an affair with a woman, then saying the girl was 16 years old. 16 was the legal age of consent in Oklahoma at the time. Evans wrote, "Had Morris told me the truth about Ms. Clemishire's age and the extent of the abuse, I would have immediately reported him to the appropriate authorities." But is this true? In 2007, something happened at New Life Church that caused quite a stir both at New Life and at Gateway. First, New Life founding pastor Ted Haggard resigned amid a sex scandal that captured national headlines. Then, the church appointed a 9-member pastoral search committee to find a replacement for Haggard. The committee was comprised of lay leaders, staff, and 2 prominent pastors, Executive Pastor Lance Coles and Senior Executive Pastor Brian Newberg.
So 9 of us began seeking the Lord. What's next for New Life? Who's the next pastor?
At the beginning of August 2007, the committee invited Gateway pastor Brady Boyd to audition for the senior pastorate at New Life. This shocked Cindy Clemishire's sister, Karen Black, who was a member at New Life at the time. She feared hiring Boyd would give Robert Morris more influence over New Life, a fear that proved to be founded. So she met with the committee and told them Morris had molested her 12-year-old sister. But the committee still hired Boyd, who then made Morris an overseer at New Life. The Roy's Report recently published this information. Then Boyd admitted it to his congregation. But he maintained the committee and New Life's 2 key pastors kept him in the dark for 18 years.
They heard in an interview with a family member that Cindy was 12 years old, and they immediately called the elders at Gateway Church and told them. And the elders of Gateway Church said, we're aware of that. It's been handled. Her family, her pastor has given Robert a thumbs up. They've gone through a process of restoration, and there's nothing left to do. It's already been reported. But the search committee didn't tell me. And so I made Robert an overseer of the church.
But did the search committee really keep this vital information about Morris from Brady Boyd? Why would it do that? And why did pastors Lance Coles and Brian Newberg say nothing when Boyd made Morris someone they knew was a pedophile and overseer at New Life? And now, why is Brady covering for these pastors, saying they're great men and shouldn't face consequences? And as for Jimmy Evans, in 2007, he was part of a meeting of Gateway elders and Morris to discuss how to handle Karen Black's disclosure to New Life leaders. But Evans claims he was never told that Cindy Clemishire's abuse began when she was 12? Well, friends, something isn't adding up, but with all the moving parts in this story, it's really easy to get confused. And believe me, some people are banking on you being confused. And so what I want to do in this podcast is clear up the confusion. I'm going to walk you step by step through the evidence so that you can discern truth from error. Welcome to the Roy's Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Royce. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of The Roy's Report. And what I'm going to be sharing with you in this podcast is absolutely mind-blowing. We now have documentation showing that Robert Morris's sexual abuse of Cindy Clemishire from the time that she was 12 to about the time she was 16 or 17 was essentially an open secret. There are indications that as many as a dozen pastors and Christian leaders knew about this abuse, and yet they stayed silent for as many as 18, some 20 years or even longer. And now Cindy Clemishire and her father have dropped a $1 million lawsuit against Robert and his wife, Deborah Morris, saying they knew about this abuse. Also against about a dozen former and current Gateway elders. And here's what's interesting about the current Gateway elders being named in this lawsuit. Back this fall, when Gateway removed a number of its elders, Trey Wilbanks, who is a current elder, said that the reason they were being removed is that they either knew about Robert Morris's abuse of Cindy Clemishire or they knew enough to ask questions, but they didn't. They stayed silent. And yet these three current elders, Kenneth Fambro, Dane Minor, and Trey Wilbanks, didn't know about Morris's abuse until it became public last year. But all three of these men have been named in this lawsuit for allegedly covering up Morris's abuse in Clemishire's lawsuit. But there are two former elders at Gateway Church, probably the two most prominent former elders, Brady Boyd and Jimmy Evans, who are not named in this lawsuit. And I admit, I was surprised by this. So I reached out to Cindy Clemishire's lawyer, Alex Yaff, and he issued a statement to me about this. He said, "We have sued those most directly responsible based on the evidence currently available. However, our investigation remains active, and we are continuing to assess all possible avenues for accountability, including the potential involvement of Jimmy Evans and Brady Boyd." And sometimes these lawsuits are filed and they want to get them out in a timely manner, and then they add names as they go. And so I kind of wonder in this case if that isn't something that's going to be happening, but we'll just be following that as it happens. But why am I keying in on these two men, Brady Boyd and Jimmy Evans? Well, part of the reason is that they are most prominent among the former elders at Gateway. Jimmy Evans runs the endtimes.com ministry, also known as Tipping Point Ministries. He also is the founder of XO Marriage. He supposedly stepped down as the president of XO Marriage back in January. He released a video about this, but I actually went to the website just today, and I noticed that on the website, he is still listed as the founder and president of XO Marriage. And again, that is a huge ministry that he's a part of. Brady Boyd, as I've mentioned, is the senior pastor of New Life Church. New Life Church is a very prominent church there in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It has 15,000 members. And so, again, huge mega church in the Colorado area. And again, Brady Boyd is the senior pastor there. Now, as I go through the evidence, you're going to see a lot of other people who also knew about Robert Morris's abuse of Cindy Clemishire. And much of this evidence was actually just filed recently in court documents on May 30th by Robert Morris's attorney. And again, Robert Morris is suing Gateway Church because he says they should give him his retirement. And his argument, and honestly, his argument is not that bad. What he's saying is, hey, listen, when the elders at Gateway Church entered into this agreement to give me millions of dollars, literally, what is it, like $800,000 a year in retirement, and then I think it drops down to like $600,000 when he dies, and that's what his wife gets for the rest of her life, provided he dies first. This incredible retirement that they entered into agreement to give to Robert Morris, he's saying they did it with the full knowledge that I had sexually abused Cindy Clemishire. I told them, he said 3 times, again in 2005, 2007, and 2011, and they still entered into these agreements with me for my retirement, so I should get my retirement. That's basically the argument in this lawsuit. And then on May 30th, as part of this lawsuit against Gateway Church, Robert Morris filed a motion, and the motion was essentially to disqualify attorney David Middlebrook as an attorney for Gateway Church. And the argument there, Robert Morris is saying, hey, listen, David Middlebrook was actually representing me when Cindy Clemishire, for example, was coming to me and accusing me of sexually molesting her. And he was helping advise both me and the elders about how to handle this. And so since he's represented me actually in this issue or related issue, he can't possibly now be representing Gateway Church in this lawsuit that they're defending themselves against, that I'm bringing against them. So again, another argument, it's gross and disgusting, but it holds water. I mean, in a lot of ways, you have to say, well, he's probably right that David Middlebrook should not be representing Gateway Church and should be disqualified. So in this motion that was filed on May 30th were a lot of documents, a lot of emails and exhibits that shed light on who knew what when it came to Robert Morris's abuse of Cindy Clemishire. And so I published a story on June 6th showing that court documents indicated that both Jimmy Evans and leaders at New Life Church, including Brady Boyd, knew Robert Morris had molested a 12-year-old girl. Now, this prompted immediate denials by both Brady Boyd and Jimmy Evans. Jimmy Evans' denial came in the form of a letter that he sent to a bunch of his supporters at Tipping Point Ministries, but Brady Boyd, his denial came in a message to his congregation on Sunday, June 8th. This was 2 days after we had published our story. But before I get into the facts of what Brady Boyd said to his congregation, I just want to play some clips of how he framed that conversation. So take a listen.
I've had a trying week, a difficult week. I want to share that with you. The Tuesday night, I'm at home. Pam and I are home with 4 cats, so you can imagine our life. It's pretty boring. And Pam started feeling kind of nauseous. Something was not right. She was not feeling great. So she went upstairs to lay down, and then finally she called me and said, you need to come up to the room. So I went up to the room. Now, Pam and I have been married 35 years. And so I know Pam really well. Been my girlfriend for 38 years. So I know when she's not feeling well. So I got up to the room, and she was super nauseous, and she's like, I think I need to go to the ER just to get this checked. I don't know what's wrong with me. And then all of a sudden, she passed out in front of me. Like, that's never happened. Again, 35 years of marriage, she passes out in front of me in our bedroom. So I had, for the first time in my married life, had to call 911. The ambulance comes, takes her to Penrose, Maine on Nevada. Turns out she just had a really severe case of nausea, which can cause, it's more common in females than males, but it causes women to pass out. And so we were there until midnight on Tuesday night. John Egan was supposed to speak today, and his message was fantastic. He spoke on Friday night. But during the day on Friday, Lewis, his youngest son, was riding a mountain bike and almost hit a tree, jumped off the bike. The bike hit the tree, but his momentum took him back into the bike, and it punctured his small intestine. And so he had Friday night at 8:30, John Egan gets a call, says, hey, your son's going into emergency surgery. So I won't give you a report. Lewis, I know if you're watching today, we love you, buddy. John, we love you, and Paige, your family. He's doing better. He got through surgery. It's been repaired. But that happened on Friday. So that's been a week, right? And then on Friday, an article came out, this investigative journalist, and I want to share this with you today. An article came out on Friday and made some really ugly accusations about me that kind of went national.
Okay, I just want to stop it right there. What Brady Boyd is doing are some classic image repair tactics here. I mean, first, he starts by engendering sympathy. And of course, it's awful that his wife had this episode and had to go to the ER. It sounds like she's fine now, which I'm glad to hear. But again, setting it up as this has been a really, really difficult week. And then he mentions this other pastor whose son, had this horrible accident and had surgery. Sounds like he's doing well now too. But again, two things that would engender some sympathy of, wow, you've had a really tough week. And then this article comes out. And notice how he sets up the article with some really ugly accusations. Again, he's had this incredibly trying week. And now here's this reporter, this investigative reporter, bringing ugly accusations. That's kind of an attack, attacking the accuser. But that, again, is a classic image repair tactic. But let me keep playing, and there are a couple more in here, too.
This place is a miracle story. We've had an unbelievable year this year. A record number of baptisms. We have rescued single moms off the streets.
Okay, I just want to mention right here, this is a tactic called bolstering. It's basically, look at all of the good that we've done. Look at how incredible we are. Again, a very common thing, before you're going to say this awful thing, talk about all the good things. So that's what he does. I'll keep playing.
We're the only free medical clinic in the state of Colorado. There's so many things that the Lord's doing powerfully among us. And this is an attack of the enemy. It's starting on Tuesday night with my wife passing out, starting with a bike accident, and then this report that was inaccurate. So what I'm leaning on this morning is trust from you.
Okay, you heard more bolstering there, and you heard more attacking the accuser. The article was inaccurate. It's interesting. I reached out to Brady and I said, hey, you said the article was inaccurate. Can you specifically tell me what was wrong there? And basically came back with, well, I'm a great guy. I've been doing a lot of work. Well, I didn't say you weren't a great guy. What I said was, these are the facts. This is what apparently you were told, and this is what you're saying now. So I don't know anything in the article that was inaccurate, but I do know that he accused me, the article, of being inaccurate, which again seems like an image repair tactic of just attacking the accuser. I also want to note that it's also concerning to me how many times when he's telling this story of what happened and trying to discuss about, why he's supposedly innocent of knowing about any of these things that Robert Morris had done to Cindy Clemenshire back in 2007, when so many of the people around him knew about it. How many times he urges people to trust him, or that he says, we're trustworthy, we're honest, I'm a man of integrity, over and over and over again. It just reminds me, of the verse in Proverbs 27:2 says, let another praise you and not your own mouth. When we have to constantly tell people how trustworthy and honest we are, to me, that's often a red flag. Listen to how many times he does this in addressing his congregation.
As your pastor, I want you to know something about me. When I stand here in front of you every Sunday, everything I tell you is the truth. I will never, ever tell something that's slanted or untrue. I'll never be manipulative toward you. I'll never tell you a half-truth. I was raised by Leland and Pat Boyd on Marshall Highway, 7 miles outside of Logansport, Louisiana, to tell the truth. And I want to look him in the eye and look Jesus in the eye, look my dad in the eye, and tell him 100% that I was a man of integrity. We have been doggedly determined to keep that pledge to each other, to make sure the church, the staff, the culture of our church is honest and full of integrity. I want you to know that. I stand before you as a blank slate, an open heart before you every Sunday. And I would not be able to sleep at night if I was not being honest and a person of integrity in front of you. So what I'm leaning on this morning is trust from you. And I want you to know something. I take that very, very seriously. The fact that you got up this morning, got dressed, and came into this building and trust me to open up the Bible and teach you the Bible is built on trust. It's built on integrity and trust. I know right now there is an all-time low trust in institutions, and I think it's because it's not necessarily in what they did, it's how they tried to cover it up. So I'm telling you here today, I am not hiding anything for you. I'll always tell you the truth. I'll tell you everything I know. I will never hide. This is Brady Boyd sitting on a stage telling you the truth this morning. I'm gonna stand on this stage and tell you the truth. I'm gonna go to bed tonight knowing I'm innocent. I've been honest with you. I'll always be honest with you. I value the trust that you've given me, and I'll always work hard to keep that trust. I know trust is earned. I tell my team all the time, trust is earned in drops, and it's lost immediately. My goal this morning is to stand here and tell you the truth and earn your trust again.
So that's how Brady Boyd responded, and we'll dig into some of his assertions and the facts of the story in just a minute. But right now, I want to go to Jimmy Evans and the letter that he sent to supporters of his Tipping Point ministry on June 7th. That would be a day after I published my story, and I'm just going to read that for you. Dear Tipping Point family, recently Robert Morris, through his attorneys, released documents and statements in court. I want to be clear. I resigned from Gateway Church in October 2020, almost 5 years ago, after expressing serious concerns about the toxic leadership environment surrounding Robert Morris and the Gateway elders. His recent actions appear to be another attempt to deflect blame and distract from his troubling history. For the record, I was never part of Robert Morris's restoration committee in the late 1980s. I first met him in the mid-1990s while he was at Shady Grove Church. I served as an apostolic elder at Gateway Church and joined the governing board in May 2018. So this is really interesting that Jimmy Evans is saying. He's saying he didn't join the governing board until May of 2018. And there almost seems to be like he's making a distinction between being an apostolic elder and being a part of the governing board. And I don't know exactly what the difference is between the apostolic elders. They don't have apostolic elders anymore after this whole just absolute train wreck with Robert Morris. They got rid of the apostolic elders, but they did for a long time have apostolic elders. But here's the thing. Jimmy Evans cannot say that he wasn't part of the governing board because, and again, I'm getting this straight from a spokesperson at Gateway Church because I reached out to them. I wanted to know because 2005 and 2007 and 2011 is when Robert Morris said he told all of the elders at Gateway about the abuse. And so I wanted to know who was on the board. And this is a letter that I received, an email I received from Christian Hammond, Gateway spokesman. And you can see right there, in 2005, the elders were, and you'll notice some are highlighted. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that are actually named in Cindy Clemeshire's lawsuit against, again, Gateway Church, Robert Morris and his wife, and a number of these elders. So George Grubbs was on the elder board in 2005. Steve Doolin, who was being sued by Cindy Clemeshire, was on the board. Tom Lane, Brady Boyd, Jeff Drott, Kevin Grove, and look, Jimmy Evans. Jimmy Evans was on the board in 2005. How he can say he didn't come on until 2018 is mind-numbing to me. And then in 2007, David Smith, Steve Doolin, Tom Lane, Brady Boyd, Galen Losh, Kevin Groves, George Grubbs, and then apostolic elders Jack Hayford. I didn't even know till I'd received this. Jack Hayford was ever an apostolic elder there. James Robeson, Olin Griffin, who was he was the pastor at Shady Grove Church where Robert Morris was before he founded Gateway Church, and when everything came out in the 1980s about what he had done with Cindy Clemeshire, it was Olin Griffin who was the pastor who then did the 2-year restoration with Robert Morris, and then Jimmy Evans. So again, this statement by Jimmy that he was not on the governing elder board of Gateway is just patently false. It's, I don't know whether it's a lie, that he knew better, or maybe he forgot. I don't know, but it just isn't true. So I'm going to continue with this letter. During my time there, again, Gateway, I was not privy to communications between Ms. Clemeshire, Gateway Church, and Robert Morris. Before Gateway Church's launch in 2000, Morris shared with me that he had, in his early 20s, an affair with a woman. At Robert Morris's request, I traveled to Oklahoma with him to meet the pastor of the church where Ms. Clemeshire attended. Morris informed me she was the woman involved in his past affair. I understood the purpose of the meeting was to address the situation pastorally. At the time, I was unaware of Ms. Clemeshire's age or any of the details of abuse. Okay, so what he's talking about there, Cindy Clemeshire told me in 2007 that she was in her church in Oklahoma City, and she heard her pastor, who was Pastor Mark Crow, talk about Robert Morris or quote him in some way in a very positive context in one of his sermons. And Cindy Clemenshire was so horrified by this, knowing what Robert Morris had done to her sister, that she went and met privately with Mark Crow. And she said, I want to tell you what Robert Morris did to my sister, and told Mark Crow about how Robert Morris had sexually molested her sister in the 1980s when she was 12, beginning when she was 12 years old to when she was about 16 or 17. Well, then what happened is that Robert Morris and Jimmy Evans somehow got wind that Mark Crow had heard about this. And so they go and make a visit. They visit him in person there in Oklahoma City. And I have called Mark Crow. I would love to hear from him what transpired in that meeting. But he hasn't responded. Because again, Mark Crow knew in 2007 that Robert Morris had sexually molested a 12-year-old, and he didn't report it. He didn't do anything about it. He stayed silent. So this visit is actually mentioned in a proposed announcement that was included as an exhibit in this motion that Robert Morris filed on May 30th. And I'm just going to read it, what he says in this proposed announcement. This was in 2011, but again, it's referencing back to this event, this visit that Jimmy Evans and Robert Morris had of this pastor in Oklahoma City back in 2007. And he writes in his proposed announcement, Jimmy Evans and I spoke with her pastor, again, this is Cindy Clemenshire's pastor, a few years ago, and he gave us a good report. She and her husband are faithful members of a Spirit-filled, Bible-believing church. Okay, so here's the problem with what Jimmy Evans said. He's saying that he was unaware of Ms. Clemenshire's age when the abuse occurred, even when he had this visit in 2007 with Mark Crow and Robert Morris. Cindy Clemenshire was very clear with me. She said, when I spoke to my pastor, I told him exactly how old my sister was when all of this happened, that she had been sexually molested. So does it make sense to you that when Jimmy Evans and Robert Morris went and paid this pastor a visit, that they didn't talk about the allegations, the specifics of the allegations, that Jimmy Evans really didn't know the age of Cindy Clemenshire? I find that a little unbelievable, but that's what Jimmy Evans claims. He continues in his letter. In 2007, Morris revealed that Ms. Clemenshire was 16 years old when his infidelity took place, and that it was only one time while visiting her home in Oklahoma. I was shocked by this. However, because the age of consent in Oklahoma was 16 at that time, I did not report Morris to the authorities. Had Morris told me the truth about Ms. Clemenshire's age and the extent of the abuse, I would have immediately reported him to the appropriate authorities. I read this and I was just like mind blown. 16 years old. And I know times have changed, but still 16 years old. Jimmy Evans is arguing that it was okay because he thought she was 16. And I guess that was the age of consent up until like a year ago in Oklahoma, which what is going on in Oklahoma? My word, 16, that is a child. That is a child. But here's what's so shocking. Again, I find it hard to believe that Jimmy Evans didn't know that Cindy Clemenshire was 12 when this happened. But even if he knew or he thought that she was only 16, somehow that's okay. I mean, it says that he was troubled by this, but understand, this was 2007. Jimmy Evans continued to serve at Gateway Church as an apostolic elder or as an elder until 2020. So that means for 13 years, he knew that Robert Morris had sexually molested a 16-year-old girl, and he did nothing. Friends, that is incredibly troubling. But now I want to back up a bit in Jimmy's letter to where he says he wasn't privy to any of these communications between Ms. Clemenshire, Gateway Church, and Robert Morris. The reason that Jimmy is saying this is, again, because in the filings that Robert Morris did, these court filings, he said that he had told the elders at Gateway about what had happened with Cindy Clemenshire, again in 2005, 2007, again in 2011. And the reason that he did was that he was forced to do so because Cindy Clemishire had come directly to him and his attorneys and said that he was a child molester and said that he needed to make things right. And so I just want to read what Robert Morris says in his motion about the background and the circumstances of events in 2005. And this is reading from his motion that he filed May 30th. And it says, between April and September of 2005, CC, which is Cindy Clemishire, sent Pastor Morris several emails accusing him of child molestation and demanding he call her. Pastor Morris recalls speaking about the correspondence with Middlebrook, who advised Pastor Morris and the other elders that Pastor Morris should not make any further contact with CC. Instead, Elder Lane engaged with CC on Pastor Morris's behalf. When these attempts to pacify CC failed, Middlebrook and the other elders proposed that Pastor Morris seek additional outside counsel. Pastor Morris then corresponded with CC directly. Pastor Morris's subsequent correspondence with CC culminated in a phone conversation on September 22, 2005, during which she demanded $2 million from him. Pastor Morris could not acquiesce to this request for obvious reasons, and, following advice by Middlebrook, the other elders, and his additional outside counsel, he asked that CC direct further correspondence to his attorney. Now, again, this is Robert Morris's account of what happens, but notice how many times he references that either Middlebrook told the elders something or the elders counseled him. It seems his narrative is that in 2005, that he went to the elders, told them, the lawyer told them, and they were involved in this whole process with what was going on with Cindy Clemishire. But there's also a 2005 email from Tom Lane in Cindy Clemishire's most recent lawsuit, and I want to read from that. In 2005, after years of struggles, plaintiff Cindy Clemishire reached out to defendant Morris via email to confront his abuse, requesting a phone call. Again, this is all consistent with what Robert Morris has in his motion that he filed. In response, Thomas Lane, a Gateway Church elder at the time, emailed plaintiff Cindy Clemishire demonstrating that Gateway Church and its elders knew that plaintiff was a child when defendant Morris sexually assaulted her, stating that Robert and Debbie, again, this is stating from the email that Thomas Lane sent to Cindy Clemishire, Robert and Debbie, along with the elders of Gateway Church, of which I am a part, desire to see you find help and healing. Your email came to me because it was sent to the general email address for Robert and not his personal email. I contacted you for two reasons. First, I wanted to let you know that Robert has been completely open with the elders of Gateway Church about his past and specifically about his indiscretion with you. I love this. They call it an indiscretion. It's not an indiscretion. He molested her. And skipping down, it says here, I want you to know that Robert and Debbie, along with the elders of Gateway Church, want you also to find healing. As he has previously stated on several occasions, Robert deeply regrets what took place and has repented to God and you, along with your parents and sister, and to the elders of both Shady Grove Church and Gateway Church. So again, more evidence that Robert Morris informed the elders who were on the board in 2005, which again includes George Grubbs, Steve Doolin, Tom Lane, Brady Boyd, Jeff Drott, Kevin Grove, and Jimmy Evans. And again, more evidence that all of those men were informed about Robert Morris's abuse of Cindy Clemishire when she was a child back in 2005. So that's what happened in 2005. The issue came up again in 2007, and here I want to go to Robert Morris's affidavit. So along with the motion that was filed on May 30th, there was an affidavit signed by Robert Morris, which explains a lot of the events that are actually in the motion. Now I know a lot of you may be thinking, and with good reason, Robert Morris is a liar. This man is not a man of integrity. I can't argue with you there. But I will say this, when somebody writes their account, a narrative, and then it's a sworn statement, an affidavit that they sign and give to the court, there are penalties for lying to the court. So this has an added weight of being a signed document, of being an affidavit, of being something that's submitted to the court. And so I think there's more of a likelihood that somebody tells the truth in a situation like this. And again, Robert Morris isn't even making the case so much now that the elders knew. This is all about emotion, about David Middlebrook being disqualified as an attorney. But this is what Robert Morris writes. My relationship with CC, again, Cindy Clemishire, also came up in 2007, and I consulted with Middlebrook as one of my attorneys. On January 30th, 2007, CC, through her then attorney, Gentner Drummond, sent Shelby Sharp, my other outside personal attorney, a demand letter and draft petition seeking damages for sexual assault and infliction of emotional distress. And now I want to just go to Gentner Drummond's letter to Shelby Sharp demanding damages for harm caused to Cindy Clemishire. And he writes, as you are aware, and beginning on or about December 25th, 1982, Reverend Morris began sexually assaulting Miss McCaleb. Again, at this point in 2007, Cindy Clemishire was married. Her last name was McCaleb. That's why they're referring to her as Ms. McCaleb, who was then 12 years old. This continued until approximately March of 1987, when Miss McCaleb was 17 years old. Further on in the letter, it says, Miss McCaleb wishes to settle this matter quietly and privately. She has been attending therapy and will continue to do so as to avoid filing the enclosed petition. Again, there was a copy of the lawsuit they were going to file if they didn't get the response they want. I require that Reverend Morris prepare and tender a binding settlement offer in an amount commensurate with his egregious behavior. Okay, now going back to the affidavit. So they referenced this letter by Gentner Drummond. I read you that letter, and now back to the affidavit. Before responding, Sharp and I appraised the other Gateway elders of Drummond's correspondence and the potential lawsuit, both of which set forth all relevant allegations about my past conduct, including prominent references to CC's purported age. I similarly apprised and sought counsel from Middlebrook, who again represented both Gateway's and my interests about how to respond to Drummond. I followed the advice I received from Sharp, Middlebrook, and the other Gateway elders over the following weeks and months, during which I exchanged several letters with CC through counsel to try and resolve the matter short of litigation. On July 5th, 2007, Drummond's firm informed me that CC had opted to continue therapy in lieu of litigation. Robert Morris has this threat, a very serious threat, of Cindy Clemishire going public and suing him for the sexual molestation of her when she was 12 to 17 years old. A very serious issue. And in his affidavit, Robert Morris is saying, I told all of the elders about this at that point. And it would make sense, would it not? That if you were facing this, that you would tell the elders who are on your board to advise you and also to have your back, which in this case is certainly what they do, instead of actually holding Robert Morris accountable. A little reminder here, these are the Gateway elders in 2007: David Smith, Steve Doolin, Tom Lane, Brady Boyd, Galen Losh, Kevin Grove, and George Grubbs. The apostolic elders at this time were the late Jack Hayford, televangelist James Robeson, Olin Griffin, and Jimmy Evans. But Morris continues. This was not the end of the situation and the problems in 2007. But this did not resolve all conflict over my past conduct. Around the same time, 2007, I and the rest of Gateway's leadership learned that CC's sister, Karen Clemishire Black, protested and spoke explicitly about CC and me during an open discussion to members of New Life after a former Gateway elder, Brady Boyd, was selected to lead that church in Colorado. In light of both the threatened lawsuit and Karen Clemishire Black's public complaints, Gateway leadership convened a special called elder meeting on August 28, 2007, and discussed the past events involving Morris and Cindy Clemishire. The following day, Elder Lane sent a letter detailing the discussion at the meeting to 4 elders who did not attend. So I wrote about this in my June 6th article, and it wasn't picked up by any of the secular media. And quite frankly, it may not have jumped out at me had I not been already talking to Karen Black and Cindy Clemishire for the past several months about what was happening at New Life. So when I saw that this incident and everything that had been disclosed to New Life in 2007 was brought up in these court documents, I wanted to put that in my article right away. Again, this has never been publicly disclosed before. And so I wrote about it, and again, because I had known about it actually for several months. Karen Black told me about it. She and her sister hadn't decided to go on the record about that yet, but then when it came out in the court documents, they said, let's go. And so that's when I reported about it. And I will say, it wasn't just the members of New Life that Karen Black told about Robert Morris and his abuse of her sister. She met with New Life's pastoral search committee, and she was absolutely shocked when she heard that Brady Boyd was the person who had been invited to come in and basically candidate for the job of being the senior pastor there at New Life to replace Ted Haggard, who had just resigned in this horrible, horrible sex abuse scandal where he had been caught with a homosexual prostitute. Just a huge, huge scandal. And any of you who are old enough to remember that, I definitely remember when this happened. It was a huge scandal because Ted Haggard was the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, not just the pastor of this huge megachurch. And so to be involved in such a sordid kind of incident was awful. And so again, Karen Black was shocked that Brady Boyd, who was involved with Robert Morris, and knowing what Robert Morris was involved in with her sister, she's thinking, this is the last thing my church needs right now. As a senior pastor, somebody who's involved with this hidden secret that's bound to come up at some time. And what is that going to do to our church? Because she was a member at New Life at that time. So again, she was shocked about that, but she was also concerned that Robert Morris, if Brady Boyd was made the senior pastor there at New Life, that Robert Morris would have more influence there at her church. And this is something that proved to be true because, again, Robert Morris became an overseer after Brady Boyd was made the senior pastor there at New Life. So after I published about what happened with Karen Black going to New Life Search Committee, telling them all about what had happened to her sister, and then they went and told the Gateway elders. But apparently, the Gateway elders already knew about it. So here's the video where Brady Boyd, again, this was on June 8th, got up in front of his congregation, and he explains what happened.
In the process, though, of them interviewing me, the search committee was brought, the fact that Cindy Clemishire was 12 years old, that was brought to their attention. They found out, they heard in an interview with a family member that Cindy was 12 years old. And they immediately called the elders at Gateway Church and told them. And the elders of Gateway Church said, we're aware of that. It's been handled. Her family, her pastor has given Robert a thumbs up. They've gone through a process of restoration, and there's nothing left to do. It's already been reported. But the search committee didn't tell me. And so I made Robert an overseer of the church. And I want to say something to you this morning. Knowing what I know now, I absolutely regret that. And I'm sorry that I ever gave confidence to a person that had an obvious evil thing happening in his life. I just want to tell you, I'm so sorry that first of all, I did not know. But I would never, ever put a known pedophile in a place of authority in this church. Never would I ever do that to you, ever.
So here's Brady Boyd saying, I would never, ever, ever, ever even dream of putting a pedophile in a position of authority at New Life Church. Would never dream of doing that. But I didn't know. Like, when the search committee at New Life in 2007, when they found out, they didn't tell me. And then when they had this conversation with the Gateway elders, I wasn't privy to that conversation. I didn't know about that. Nobody told me. Well, here's what's so shocking. One, when New Life, that search committee, went to the Gateway elders, they already knew about it. They weren't shocked. Like, when did they find out about it? Apparently, it wasn't news to them. And what's so shocking is that Brady Boyd, who was on the elder board in 2007? It was Brady Boyd. He was a Gateway elder. And we know that the discussion that Karen Black had with the Pastoral Search Committee, that took place on August 10th, 2007. And the way that I know that is because Karen Black gave me an email that she received from Lance Coles, and I'm going to show that to you. Again, note the date at the top is August 10th, 2007. Why is that so important? Because Brady Boyd didn't become a pastor at New Life until August 27, 2007. So on August 10th, he was still Gateway Associate Senior Pastor and an elder at Gateway Church. But Lance writes in this letter, "Dear Karen, thank you for coming to speak to the Pastoral Selection Committee. I know that was very difficult for you. However, you did an excellent job of helping us understand the severity of your concerns. Beverly forwarded us the letter you sent her. That is very helpful to us all. Please know that I am making every effort to inform all of the appropriate New Life authorities. I have been unsuccessful at hearing back from 3 of them at this time. I know one of our overseers is traveling but is usually very good at responding quickly. I will update you on our developments as soon as possible, continuing to pray for God's wisdom and will to be done, Lance." So in addition to finding out through this letter or this email that August 10th was when Karen Black went to the search committee and told them about what had happened to her sister, we also find out that Lance had informed a bunch of these New Life authorities. He doesn't mention who they are exactly, but he mentions overseers. Do you know who was an overseer of New Life? In fact, he was kind of the most prominent overseer. If you look at the whole Ted Haggard stuff and any of the news reports, the person who is talking and doing most of the communications on the behalf of the overseers is Larry Stockstill. And if you know Larry, he is the founding pastor of Bethany Church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. At the time, he would have been the senior pastor. He's now stepped down in more an emeritus role there. But again, Larry Stockstill, his name comes up again because he is the only person who was an overseer in 2007 who is still an overseer there at New Life Church. So this is New Life's, I mean, New Life Church, if you're a member of New Life Church right now, you should be very concerned. One, there's indications that one of your overseers knew that Robert Morris was a pedophile and allowed him to serve as an overseer too. Larry Stockstill apparently, it seems almost incredulous to think that he was kept out of the loop on this. So he's probably known this whole time. You have 2 pastors that we know for sure, Lance Coles and Brian Newberg, who are still executive pastors there at New Life Church. They knew. And now there seems to be so many indications that Brady Boyd knew. The other overseers, just so you know, at New Life Church at the time were some local pastors, Tim Ralph, Michael Ware, and Mark Cowart. But again, I am guessing that Larry Stockstill found out about this at that time too. So this isn't the only thing, though, that indicates that Brady Boyd knew in 2007 about Robert Morris's abusing Cindy Clemenshire, about these disclosures that her sister Karen Black had made. Remember, in his affidavit, Morris says that following Karen Black's disclosure to New Life, the Gateway elders had an emergency meeting. And because of the motion that was filed and the exhibits that were filed with it on May 30th by Robert Morris, we now know everybody that was involved in that meeting. We also know the other elders who weren't there, but who were informed by an email that came from Elder Tom Lane at the time. We have this document, and so I'd like to read it to you. So this is a letter from Tom Lane, dated August 29, 2007. He writes, And notice who it's addressed to Gayland, that's Gayland Losh, an elder at the time, George Grubbs, another elder, Brady Boyd, another elder, and then Dave Smith. So these are 4 elders at Gateway Church who were not able to make the meeting. So Tom Lane is informing them about what happened. He writes, "Since you all were unable to attend the special called elder meeting last night, I am writing to give you a report. In attendance were Shelby Sharp, who is private attorney of Robert Morris, Jimmy Evans, Olin Griffin, remember him, Robert Morris, Steve Doolin, Kevin Grove, and me, Tom Lane. We discussed the past events involving Robert and Cindy Clemishire. Robert retold his account of the things that took place leading up to 1987 and the process of repentance and restoration he walked through from 1987 to 1989. Olin was the pastor that oversaw this process, and he confirmed and corroborated Robert's account of the events. In light of the open discussion by Karen to members of New Life, we discussed how to respond. As we discussed the process that Robert has followed for now approximately 20 years, it was our conclusion that nothing more specific needs to be mentioned regarding this situation. Robert repented, stepped out of ministry for a 2-year period. He met with the Clemishire family to repent and ask their forgiveness. During his restoration period, Toby Clemishire, the father, gave approval to Olin for Robert to return to ministry following the restoration process. By the way, Cindy Clemishire vehemently denies that. One, that they ever forgave Robert Morris, and they were hoping, and her father wanted Robert to be out of ministry for the rest of his life. This is all quite questionable, the version of events in this letter. But it says, as we reviewed the account, we felt strongly that this is a closed issue and does not need to be exposed by Robert. If because of the exposure by Karen and her conversations with leaders and life group members in Colorado Springs, the media picks up the story and want to report on the specific details, we will have a prepared statement to give them, and we will respond honestly regarding the events now more than 20 years old in writing. Shelby again felt that we should not act in a way that makes this past event a current story. Robert's ministry and the integrity of his life over the past 20 years only confirms that his repentance made 20 years ago was real. Wow. So again, this is a second piece of evidence showing that Brady Boyd knew what was going on between the Gateway elders and the New Life Search Committee and the disclosure by Karen Black about what had happened with her sister back there in 2007. Now, I went back to Brady Boyd and I asked him specifically about some of these things. I asked him about being a Gateway elder. I mean, they said they immediately contacted the Gateway elders. You're a Gateway elder. How did you not get contacted? And he said his response was that I was already in Colorado Springs on August 6th to preach 3 straight weekends. So, I mean, they have email, they have phones. It is so hard for me to imagine. These are men that Brady Boyd has served as pastor with, as an elder with. These are friends. Robert Morris, he described as one of his closest friends. This is all going up, and it all concerns him. The whole reason it happened is because he's about to be made pastor there at New Life, and Karen Black is trying to stop it. And you're telling me nobody told him? Nobody told him? And then because he's in Colorado Springs on August 6th, like, he can't take calls. He doesn't read emails. I mean, this is crazy. I asked him specifically, too, about the missed email from Tom Lane, and his response was, and I quote, "It was a crazy season." I mean, really? This had to have been one of the most intense seasons of Brady Boyd's life. You would think everything would be in Technicolor, and you would think this thing that almost sabotaged his entire being appointed as senior pastor to this big megachurch, you would think he would remember this. But apparently not. And he missed the email from Tom Lane. So here's what we know, and I just want to review here. We know that all the elders at Gateway knew Robert Morris had molested Cindy Clemishire as a child. We know that the New Life Pastoral Search Committee, including 2 top New Life pastors, knew Morris had molested Cindy Clemishire as a child. We also know that these 2 pastors, Lance Coles and Brian Newberg, worked right alongside, I would guess closely, with Brady Boyd for the past 18 years. But they never discussed it. Some, if not all, New Life overseers knew that Morris had molested Cindy Clemishire as a child. Most likely, Larry Stockstill knew, since he was the most prominent of the overseers. And this was a major issue as to whether New Life was going to hire Boyd. Boyd received an email about a Gateway Elders meeting concerning Karen Black's disclosure, but Boyd had no idea. There's one other piece of information I want to add to this. I talked to Karen Black, and she said that Lance Coles had said that he was going to arrange a meeting between her and Brady Boyd. And even it sounded like Brady Boyd had requested this meeting. And then she got another communication from Lance Coles where he said Brady Boyd had declined to meet with her. Friends, if Brady Boyd didn't know in 2007 the details of Robert Morris's abuse of Cindy Clemishire, he certainly falls into the category of one of those elders, one of those leaders who knew enough to ask questions, but somehow becomes very uncurious. Doesn't even want to meet with Karen Black to hear it from her. Why is that? Why would you not want to meet with her? And if he didn't know about these things, why did he even know about Karen Black? To even meet with her? I mean, clearly he was informed. I find it incredulous what he's claiming right now. But the fact that he didn't want to meet with her, you know what that says to me? Plausible deniability. Plausible deniability. He has been thinking about plausible deniability for a really, really long time. And so when he got the opportunity to get up and deny, that's precisely what he did. But there's just a few more things I want to point out. And something that Brady Boyd said on June 8th when he addressed his congregation is extremely troubling to me. Because you remember, Brady Boyd got up and said, I would never, ever even dream of putting a pedophile. Friends, I would never do that to you. I would never put a pedophile in a position of authority. I am so sorry I put Robert Morris, a pedophile, as an overseer of this church. Remember when he said that? And then in the same breath, listen to what he says about the New Life Pastoral Search Committee, who again, we know, it's not even a question, we know that they knew that Robert had molested Cindy Clemishire. They sat back and did nothing. These 2 pastors, Lance Coles and Brian Newberg, sat back and did nothing for the past 18 years while Robert Morris served as an overseer of that church and came and was a guest speaker and preacher at New Life. And they said nothing. And you know what Brady Boyd said? You know how he characterized the people that served on that pastoral search committee? Take a listen.
When I was interviewed here 18 years ago, there was an amazing group of people. I think 5 men, 4 women, a 9-person search committee that did a worldwide search for the next senior pastor of New Life Church. And they were amazing people, great people. They did due diligence on me. Some of the questions they asked me, I've never been asked before, but you can understand they needed to make sure that if they were going to put another person in a position of leadership at New Life, that person needed to be vetted well.
Wow, just stunning. He calls the pastoral search committee, who again knew about what happened with Robert Morris and kept silent all of these years, 18 years, none of them has said anything. These are the group of people he calls great people, an amazing group of people. Why does he do that? Why does he do that? Again, this is something he can't even dream of doing himself. And yet he calls those who he knows did it great people, an amazing group of people. You know, I reached out to Brady Boyd about this. I said, you know, are Lance Coles and Brian Newberg, they're still on staff at at New Life, are they going to face any consequences for what they did? And why do you praise them in what you said on June 8th? And this is what he said. He responded to me. I cannot discuss staff employment. Both men are humble and repentant. They have a long track record of faithful service. I don't have any words for that. They may be humble people. They may be repentant people. But they're disqualified leaders at this point. When you sit back and you allow a pedophile, a liar, because pedophiles are deceptive. It's a pattern of life with them. When you allow that to happen, a man who's deceiving people who all think he's a great man of God and don't realize he sexually abused a girl for 4 years when she was 12 to 16 or 17. Seriously? They sat back and did nothing? You are disqualified. You do not protect the sheep. You sat quietly while a wolf came into the sheep pen and you said nothing. You did nothing. This is shocking. The fact that Brady Boyd would say that and would address them in that way, you know what that tells me? And maybe I'm a little skeptical after being in this position, but I've done a lot of investigations. And what that tells me is that maybe those men know something that Brady Boyd doesn't want to be told. And so, yeah, he's not going to talk about it. Not going to talk about it. But there's one other thing I want to show you, and that is an email from an anonymous sender in 2011. This email was addressed, and you can see right there in the address line, address to bboyd@newlifechurch.org and Lance Coles at newlifechurch.org. And the subject is Pastor Robert Morris of Gateway Church in Dallas molests 12-year-old girl. This was also addressed, as you can see there, all the elders at Gateway Church and specifically Tom Lane. The email talks about Morris molesting, again, a 12-year-old girl by the name of Cindy Clemishire. They have the name. Whoever this anonymous person was, this person sure had a lot of inside information. So it has her name, Cindy Clemishire. It says the abuse continued until Cindy was 17. It also mentions that the search committee at New Life was made aware by Cindy's sister, Karen Clemishire Black, about Mr. Morris's previous transgression. Nothing was reported to the authorities. That is true. It also states that New Life agreed to overlook Morris's pedophile history and hired Brady Boyd from Gateway. Other people who are aware and also mandatory reporters include the members of the search committee for a pastor at New Life Church in Colorado Springs, Brady Boyd, and much of the senior staff at Gateway, as well as Larry Stockstill of Bethany World Prayer Center in Louisiana, who was also an integral part of the process. Well, again, this was an anonymous email. Are the facts accurate? Did Larry Stockstill know, along with a bunch of New Life's leadership? I don't know. There's an awful lot of facts in this anonymous letter that seem to be right. And so I tend to believe that, yeah, probably Larry Stockstill did. He's one of the current New Life overseers, along with Greg Surratt. He's the only other overseer. Greg Surratt is the president of the Association of Related Churches, or ARC. This is a scandal-plagued network of churches. There have been, if you follow my reporting at all, in fact, you can go to investigations, look down, you click on the investigations tab and go down at our website, and you will see there is a whole entire section of investigations on the Association of Related Churches and Church of the Highlands, Chris Hodges. Just click on that. You'll see there are just probably a dozen or so pastors who have been involved in sexual misconduct and abuse and who have left their churches in absolute scandal. Those are Association of Related Churches. The entire system of ARC, their philosophy that they're based on, is like the Moses model, where the pastor is like Moses and he hears directly from God, and the elders are just there really to make sure that he's healthy, but they don't really hear from God. It's the pastor that hears directly from God. There's no priesthood of all believers in ARC churches. It's an exaltation of the pastor, of the celebrity pastor who he has divine insight, which of course gives him all sorts of power, which again, allows him to abuse. They also have this whole system of launching large, and they grow. Literally, some of these churches have been named as the fastest growing churches in the United States, only to implode a few years later because their senior pastor, raped the secretary or was in some sort of, affair with some masseuse that happened to a pastor in Houston. I mean, just unbelievable, that church. I can't imagine a worse overseer than Greg Surratt, to be honest. Unbelievable that he is in that position. And man, again, if I were at New Life, I would be concerned, deeply concerned about this. Again, the subject line on this 2011 email spells out Cindy Clemishire molested by Robert Morris when she was 12. How did Brady Boyd not see this? Went right to his email address. I asked him about that. He said he has 2 emails. One is a bulk email and the other is a personal email. He said this particular email address was a bulk email. And that one, he has 2 administrators who sift through that and then forward him the emails. Why would the administrators who sift through this, why would they not forward an email claiming that Robert Morris, an overseer there, had molested a girl when she was 12? Why would they not do that? When I asked Brady Boyd about that, he said, and I quote, "I have no explanation for why those emails did not reach me." No explanation. Also went to Lance Coles. He won't talk to me. It's very concerning. It's very concerning. And it's time, quite frankly, it's time for justice. It's time for truth. There are so many pastors who knew. There are so many Christian leaders who knew. And they all need to be brought to account. I've seen most of the comments on our article that we posted about Cindy Clemishire and the lawsuit that she's filed against Gateway Church. Most everybody's saying, the only pushback I'm seeing is that she asked for $1 million and not $10 million or $20 million. It's unbelievable what was done to this woman. It's unbelievable that supposed men of God would look the other way, knowing who Robert Morris was and what he did to this woman, that they would disparage her and not him. That's how the evangelical celebrity machine works. And it's disgusting. And unless these men are brought to account, it'll keep happening. It will just keep happening. And so that's my hope and prayer. I've armed you with the information. You look at this information. You discern truth from error. You discern what should be done. And then you hold the people who need to be held to account. Would you do that for me, please? I think that's what we need to do as the body of Christ. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Roys Report. Again, I'm Julie Roys, and I want to remind you that we are listener supported. So if you appreciate these podcasts, you want them to continue, would you please consider donating to the Roys Report? To give, just go to julieroys.com/donate. That's julieroys.com/donate. Also, please subscribe to the Roys Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. That way, you'll never miss an episode. And then while you're at it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word about this podcast by leaving a review. And then, please share the podcast on social media so more people can hear about this great content. Again, thanks so much for joining me, and God bless.